So the Linux deployment succeeded. It only took about 5 minutes, less than. I think the reason it took a lot less was because it didn't have to create a new storage group, and the network has already existed. So a lot of the things that we would have had to create in the Windows deployment, we don't have to create in the Linux. But it's also possible that installing Ubuntu Linux is just faster than installing Windows, even if it's an image that it's restoring it from. So we have a Linux virtual machine. Now you'll remember that when I created it, I used a password model. And of course, it's not very useful at the moment to have a Linux box that requires a password, because you generally require SSH to connect, using the SSH tunnel. And so I can go into this reset password and I can set an SSH public key, and have the private key on hand, and then use SSH to remote in. Now it does support a remote desktop. There is a remote desktop option within Linux. Okay, so there's a certain instructions, and you have to install RDP, which is a XRDP. There's a Linux version. So you can connect to a Linux box using RDP, surprisingly, but you do have to have SSH in order to get into your Linux box in order to install RDP. That's something that when you're creating your Linux box, make sure you have at least SSH as an option, even if you want to have a password that you can then remote into it. I'm not sure why Microsoft allows me to create a Linux box that only has a password, but I guess there's options where other tools can connect to it using the password. I'm going to discard that because we're not going to do that right now. But that was pretty easy to create a Linux box.